We at Humana so appreciate the partnership we have with Texas A&M University, and in particular, the Mays Business School. The program that we have been able to build now over 5 years has turned into something honestly quite special.
It's something very important to us. The experience they gain is immense.
My biggest takeaway from this whole experience is the need to clarify expectations and how helpful that is.
I learned a lot about people management and my need to develop those skills.
The biggest takeaway that I'm going to be taking away is the importance of working collaboratively.
What I learned about myself through this competition is I can do more than I think I can.
I learned from myself that we always need to challenge some hypotheses.
I have a deeper understanding on how data can help you be a better manager and a better policymaker.
It's one thing when you're in the classroom and you're studying about the programs that are out there. It's another thing to have to roll up your sleeves and to see just how challenging some of these issues are. The data isn't clean, the data isn't pure. You've got to bring in new sorts of data. You've got to try new technologies and new techniques. And you never get it right the first time. You have to iterate your way into the answer.
Our solution really make great impact for the society, and we make contributions to the well-being of the Humana members.
Gets us more ready for the workplace and our jobs in the future.
Having the luxury to play with such real big data that is so relevant nowadays. So it's not every day that you get to play with hesitancy of vaccination data.
We are not just having some academic study, building models from nowhere. We are actually having a business goal.
Getting to work with Humana data and getting the opportunity to use data that's real and not for some academic project is exciting.
I think the best part in this competition is that we can provide an end-to-end solution.
It better prepares me in terms of adding a real-world project to my portfolio.
This case competition is only producing better problem solvers, better decision makers, and therefore better corporate leaders.
I have a better understanding of this healthcare industry in the United States.
Business is quite a combination of arts and science, because we need to use scientific approach to gather results, and then also we need to use creative ideas to generate strategies and solutions. That's quite fantastic.
It's important for students like myself and my team members to experience these types of learnings, because you can only learn so much in a classroom. And when you're actually in it, doing it, and you're experiencing it, that's when you can apply concepts that are theoretical and put them into practicality. And this competition gave us a perfect opportunity to do that.
The folks that are showing up, they're diverse.
These students are awesome.
I could not have been more impressed with the talent, with the polish, with the practical application of the things that each of these folks have been able to learn through their respective programs.
I would definitely recommend this competition for as many students as possible, because personally it motivated a lot, and it's really good opportunity to apply our class learnings to the competition.
The one thing I want to make sure I emphasize is my appreciation for all of the competitors starting in round one and certainly landing with these 5 teams.
I want to say thank you to Humana and Mays Business School for putting on this case competition.
Hello. Good afternoon. I am Jeff Monsees. I'm a director within Humana's Data Governance Office, and I want to welcome you to the 2022 Humana Analytics Healthcare Case Competition. We're super excited that you have joined us today to hear about what we're offering you to participate in this year's competition. First, I'll cover off on a few housekeeping items before we jump into the meat of today's content. Number one, today's call will be recorded and will be posted up to the competition website shortly after the call. So you can listen to it again if you're so inclined, or send it to others who might not have been able to join us today. Again, the website is heavily documented throughout this presentation, so everything about the competition, rules, eligibility, everything is embedded in that website, how to submit, where to submit, timelines, everything. So that's the go-to place, and I would certainly use that as your resource throughout the journey of the 22 case competition this year. Secondarily, we will be taking question and answers shortly, immediately after this call, or during this call at the end, as we wrap up, if you will, the content. Will transition to Q&A, and I'll encourage you to use the Q&A tab on the Zoom site itself in order to submit those questions, and then we'll answer as many as we can. And if we can't get to all of them today, we'll certainly post answers again on the website. Will be your resource for that. So recording and Q&A is super important, and just wanted to make sure that you're all knowledgeable about that before we get going. So real quick, to cover today's agenda, we'll introduce the players who you'll be hearing from today. Then we'll come back and talk a little bit about the competition from, I guess the formalities of it, if you will, some history, eligibility, timelines, prizes aspect of it. Then we'll actually unveil what this year's topic is as it relates to this year's challenge. You'll get an overview of that and an overview of the data that you'll be available to swim in and enjoy to come up with your solutions. And then finally, we'll give an overview of what it takes to be successful in this year's competition, the criteria that will be used for judging, some details related to each of the 3 rounds, et cetera, et cetera. So that's what we'll cover off today. And that's what I wanted to just introduce you and welcome to you. You'll certainly come back to me in a few minutes, but right now I'll plan on handing it up. I guess one thing, I'll introduce all the players that we'll talk to. So we'll go to the next slide about who are your hosts today. And again, my name is Jeff Monsees. I have already introduced myself, but joining us today from Texas A&M May School of Business will be Dr. Jerry Strasser. He'll provide you a little bit of a welcome as well as background on Texas A&M. This is the 6th year that we've partnered with them to host this case competition. We're always super excited about this case competition. We've been planning it for months and months, and Texas A&M is a great partner and integral to our success. So thank you, Dr. Strasser, for joining us. Jen Dimitrion will talk about Humana. She's our executive host today from Humana, and we'll welcome you to this year's case competition. Stephanie Franklin is what we'll call our business partner and subject matter expertise on the problem itself, business problem itself. And then Gil Hall will provide some details as it relates to the data itself. So those are the hosts who you'll all hear from today. And again, welcome, and I'll hand it off right now to Dr. Jerry Strasser from Texas A&M.
Thank you, Jeff. Welcome, everybody. I'm Jerry Strasser, Associate Dean for Graduate Programs at Mays Business School, Texas A&M University. I'm also a professor of accounting and KPMG chair in accounting. So I'm an accounting nerd, a numbers freak. So this is just right up my alley. If I can see the next slide, let me give you a little bit of an overview about Texas A&M University. So we're a very unique university. We're a large university. We have over 70,000 students in the university, over 6,000 students in Mays Business School, but we're also an excellent university. If you take a look at the slide, you'll see that we're a member of the American Association of American Universities. There's only 63 of those in the United States. Also, Mays Business School is highly ranked in terms of the quality of our undergraduate programs, the quality of our graduate programs, and the quality of our faculty and the research that they do. We are honored and pleased to host this competition with Humana. It's a company we have a great relationship with. As Jeff mentioned, this is the 6th year we've been in partnership together. In addition to the case competition, our organizations share a unique set of core values and a unique culture, which makes this a wonderful value-added partnership for both of us. A question that often comes up is why we're organizing this competition. First and foremost, healthcare is very important to us in the business school. It's one of our grand challenge areas that we look at across all of our departments and in all of our programs. Along these lines, we're proud that the president and CEO of Humana, Mr. Bruce Broussard, is a Mays Business School graduate with degrees in finance and accounting. And we're just so thankful for Humana to give us this opportunity to participate in the competition. We hope the competition will challenge you. We hope the competition will bring out the best in you. And we hope the competition will allow you to use your analytical skills and your abilities to come up with solutions to help the healthcare industries. Thank you for being here today with us. And now I'm happy to turn this over to our partners from Humana, who provide you with an overview of the competition and some of the details.
Great, thank you so much. Hi, my name is Genevieve Dimitri, and I have the pleasure of heading up our enterprise data governance strategy function across Humana. Data is, I will be a self-professed data geek. I like to refer to myself as the data diva, hence why we're a big partner of this project. Humana as an organization is all about our members. And these partnerships and doing these competitions with Texas A&M has been very exciting for me. This is my third year doing it, although it's been around for 6 years. And I am really grateful for the opportunity to participate with our business partners within Humana itself, as well as our partners within Texas A&M, as well as looking at the challenges we're facing and finding opportunities for us to use the data for good. Right? Our job is data. Our job is to secure data and provide that data for the enterprise. So I'm really happy to be here. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Stephanie, or back to Jeff. Sorry about that.
Thanks, Jen. Appreciate it. Right now, I'll just run through some kind of case history, if you will, and where we've come from and what you're all getting yourself into as you participate in this year's case competition. So we'll go to the competition overview slide, please. Basically, the case competition is an opportunity for you as students to showcase what you're learning in the classroom and to apply it to real-world data and real-world business problems that we at Humana are working on today. So it's a great opportunity for you to work on a very large data set with a tough problem. And in fact, that's one of the things that we try to do when we look for identification of what problem or topic are we using over the course or during this year. And typically what the criteria for that is, number one, it's something that is a problem that we're chewing on currently at Humana. It's something that's important to us. It's something that is going to improve the overall health and well-being of our members and the population at large. That's important. Secondarily, it's going to be a challenging problem. With the prize money that we're offering, as you can see, we're at an $80,000 total purse. This is not chump change in any way, shape, or form. So we don't want to make it a cakewalk in terms of ease and simplicity. So there's ambiguity in the data. There's complexity in the problem at large. And that's super important for us to convey that to you as students, because that's something that we face every day in what the work that we do and the business problems that we're trying to solve. So that's kind of a background on kind of what we look for and how we try to do it. We definitely try to involve, as you'll see when we bring Stephanie forward, a business partner who's a sponsor, so to speak, who's passionate, and this is their drive every day. And they are the best people to work with because they work with us, they're passionate about it, and they're subject matter experts to provide that detail and perspective to folks like yourself as students, or to myself even, who don't deal with it on a daily basis, to say, this is what we've done, this is what we already know, and ideally what you're going to do and during the case competition here is to incrementally provide value to things that we might have done already and already know. So that's kind of loose overview. Eligibility I have to cover, but of course the website has all the rules and regulations as it terms to formal eligibility, but it's pretty simple, honestly. You just have to be enrolled as a full-time or part-time in an accredited master's program. That's really actually all you need to do in order to be eligible. Generally speaking, you as an individual, you're only allowed to be on one team. Each team usually is comprised of 2 to 4 members. However many people you choose to partner with, completely up to you, but it has to be in that 2 to 4 range. Secondarily, the number of teams from your individual school, that doesn't matter to us. I know historically we've had some schools that have 25 teams who participate. They make it a priority at their school to participate in this case competition because it's grown and it gives them such an opportunity to work and challenge themselves. So encourage your peers in your program to participate and have friendly competitions even amongst yourselves because you'll also know and see kind of where you stack up as we go and progress through the competition. I mentioned you can only be on one team, and I think one of the only other things worth mentioning, although I'll certainly point you to the website again for all the formal details, is you have to still be enrolled as a student. Couldn't have graduated when we get to the finals in November. So that's, you just have to be an active student in a master's program, in an accredited master's program from now until November 10th when we have the finals. And last, of course, is Humana. If you're an associate of Humana, sorry, but you're not eligible just because of obviously the conflict type of things that might arise there. The details on the right just go and show you our history over the past 5 years. We've had a great range of topics, talking about clinical topics, whether it be readmissions or heart attack likelihood. We had obviously COVID, vaccine hesitation last year. So we're always looking for topics that are interesting, top of mind to bring to you. And as I mentioned earlier, things that we're already working on. Next slide, please. So a couple of things that I'll bring up as highlights that we started to do last year and we're going to continue this year because I think it worked out so well last year and we certainly want to increase it and its volume, is the adoption of the leaderboard. And what the leaderboard is it allows you as a participant to make some submissions for your first round, which is really model performance, a couple of times before the final deadline that happens. And this gives you a chance to iterate, if you will. How am I doing? How's my performance of my models stacking up to people who also participated in the leaderboard? And I think that's a really great way for you to iterate and not be, submitting one time and praying, right? You have opportunity to improve and iterate as you go forward. So that leaderboard will provide more details on that, but I think that's a really good thing that we'll continue to work on and improve, and you'll see that this year. Secondarily, again, something that was introduced last year, but we're going to continue it because it's so important and impactful, is the inclusion of fairness and equity measures on your solution. Obviously, with the implementation of AI and machine learning type of capabilities, it's really important to ensure that the solutions that are provided are fair and equitable and provide equal opportunity amongst everybody that's eligible to receive treatments or follow-throughs, if you will. And so we have formalized that fairness and equity measurements as part of the first round judging criteria. And again, there's some details on that we'll talk about a little bit more. And there's a paper that's out on the website to be very specific and prescriptive on how you can measure that and how you will measure that going forward. And we'll look at that as you'll see when we talk about judging criteria. And then certainly last and not least, I mentioned the importance of our business sponsor, Stephanie in this particular case. We're going to put them on our panel of final judges there because they're the ones dealing with it on a daily basis. So when we get to the finals and you're top 5 team and you're presenting to our executive panel, it's important that we have people who have a stake in the game every day to be there and say, you know what, that really hits a home run for me, and is able to weigh in on who wins in the prize money for this year's case competition. So we're going to continue those things, and you'll see it bigger and better than ever this year. Next slide, please. The most important thing that we talk about on this day is just making sure you're aware of the timelines. Today, obviously, is the kickoff, September 14th. This is where we're unveiling, if you will, this year's case competition topic and give you the setup for this year's case. Team signups start really, people can have been signing up already, but they go through September 23rd. That's the last day that you have to sign up your team. And what that means, in order to officially be signed up and validated, if you will, as a team, is each one of your team members have to have completed and submitted that non-disclosure agreement. That allows us at Humana to release the data to you. So that's the deadline for team signups, September 23rd. Make sure everybody on your team has their own NDA signed. Super, super important. Once you have the team has all been validated, we'll send you a release and credentials for the data, and you can go and download the data sets that you need to compete in the competition. The next real marker date is the 27th. We give you a little less than a week, or depending on when you sign up for your team, till the 27th to swim in the data, get familiar with it, do some exploratory work. And then on the 27th, we'll come back together in a format like this, such as a Zoom call, to give you an opportunity to ask questions and get answers to those specific questions. Presumably, most of them will be related to the data. Hey, what does this field mean? I see this in the data. Can you help me understand that a little bit more? So that is your real, your one opportunity, frankly, to talk in a live, in-person type of format to get your questions answered. Now, that doesn't mean that it's your only time to ask questions, because throughout the competition, all the way up until the competition submission date of October 16th, you'll have the ability to ask questions, written questions via email, and submit those through the website, and we'll answer those and post the answers on the website so you all can read and see and hear. And the nice thing is, if somebody from school X asks a question, everybody will see the question, everybody will see the answer. So that's a nice function of that website that will continue all the way through the case competition itself. I mentioned October 16th. That's the date that you have to have circled in pen on your calendar, because that date won't change. If you submit your team registration on September 12th or September 23rd, that's still the date that you have to submit your final submission. So you'll get your data early if you submit your whole team early, but that's the deadline. And everything has to be in on October 16th. That means, and we'll cover this in a minute, that means the file that we use to validate performance, and that means your written submission. So those are both round 1 and round 2 data, and written submissions have to be turned in on October 16th. The next date on the calendar is the 19th. That just gives us a couple of days to look at your validation or holdout files and determine who the top 50 teams are. And we'll talk about what defines the top 50 in a few minutes. And then you get notified if you make it to the top 50. Hey, congratulations on the 19th. You'll know that you're into round 2, if you will. Even though you've submitted already round 2 written submissions, you'll get notified on October 19th. And then shortly thereafter, might not feel like shortly to you participants by any means, but on the 28th, then we'll have read all the submissions, and you'll see that it's a rigorous process to get through round 2 to identify the top 5 finalists. But you will be notified on October 28th if you're a top 5 finalist, which means you will be presenting in the finals on November 10th. So this calendar, super important that you keep. front and center and make sure that you understand all the details and requirements of submissions and timing, because we don't vary at all from this calendar, no exceptions, so to speak. So next page, please. Last and certainly not least on this part of the presentation is talking about prizes. Again, we're at the $80,000 total purse. So $50,000 of that first place. Second place, $20,000. Third place, $10,000. Now that's per team, obviously, not per person. So just make sure you understand each team, first place team, there'll only be one, will get $50,000. So that's a lot of money, $20,000 and $10,000 for second and third. Also, you know, nothing to shake a stick at in terms of be upset if you get first, second, or third in this case competitions. Over the last 5 years, the level of competition and the thoroughness of solutions is amazing, and the depth and completeness is crazy. If you want to see what success looks like, go to the website, and we have the submissions for the last several years, top 5 teams that you can look at, and so you can get a sense about the level of commitment that is required to make it to the top 5 and then ultimately first, second, or third. So we put that out there for full transparency. It's important to us because we always want to raise the level of competition and what people are doing, but also we want to set the expectation appropriate with you so you know what you're getting into. It takes a little bit to get where you need to win $50,000, but it's worth it at the end, believe me. Next slide is really a slide that just talks about details in terms of what you need to know to get started, the registration site, where you get your team registered. What is needed with the registration is just a team name, all of your individuals on your team, somebody is designated as a team leader, what school, and then, as I mentioned, the NDA, such that you can get your data released to you. All of that information needs to be complete in order for you to be validated, such that we can return data to you. I mentioned to you about you can register as early as September 14th, and go all the way through the 23rd. As soon as your team is validated, you get the data will be released to you shortly thereafter. And what does that mean to you? We'll send you some credentials to a Dropbox type thing, and you'll go and download the data, and you're off and running at that point in time. And then if you ever have problems, again, the website is one place. There's question and answers there, or you can certainly, there's a registration or just a general question or problem email that you can always use as well. And these details we'll cover off in a minute again. But that's some of the getting started information. And now I think from here, we're going to actually hand it to Stephanie, who can tell us a little bit about what this year's case competition problem set is. So Stephanie, I'll hand it to you. Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff. And it's a pleasure to be with you today. I work on our team that's really focused on advancing health equity and addressing the health-related social needs of our members. Humana promotes and believes in whole person care, where we are addressing the physical, mental, and social health needs of our members. And we believe that is how we help them achieve their best health and how we create a more equitable health system. Health-related social needs are the immediate health-harming conditions that affect an individual. So they may be the result of structural or social determinants of health, factors like public policy, systemic racism, housing policy, food deserts. But we can screen for them and at the individual level, and it includes things like food insecurity, transportation barriers, loneliness, financial strain, and of course, housing insecurity, which is the problem that we are hoping to come up with some good solutions for this year. So housing insecurity is defined as the lack of access to quality and safe housing. So there are many factors that may influence this, affordability of housing. There could be poor housing conditions that make it not a great, stable place to live. Some people have frequent moves. All of these put individuals at higher risk of housing insecurity. We know that housing insecurity impacts individuals in the United States, across the country. It does impact the seniors who are on Medicare Advantage, and we have conducted screenings of our members and know that while it isn't the most common social need, we do see that we have members who are either facing the risk of losing their home or who really don't have a steady place to live at that moment. So the problem that you all are working on this year is using the data that we're providing, which is we'll talk about a little bit later, but really is coming from actual member screenings. Combining it potentially with public data to create a model to identify Medicare members who are likely to be struggling with housing insecurity needs, and to propose some solutions that help them achieve their best health. Housing insecurity is a really multifaceted issue that involves both individual risk factors as well as place-based risk factors, things like local housing policy and the housing stock that's available. So it has proven to be a really challenging issue, not just for Humana, but for society to really grapple with. So look forward to seeing what the teams come up with. So I'll hand it back to you, Jeff.
Thanks, Stephanie. So next slide, we'll boil everything down to what are we looking for and what is it all about this year? It's three, the objectives of this year's case competition. First and foremost, it will be, how do we identify members who are most likely to be experiencing housing insecurity issues? That's kind of the underlying and fundamental question that is going to be asked, and you'll be judged on some of your performance and your ability to accurately identify those members who are suffering or experiencing housing insecurity. Building on that, of course, because it's nice to know who they are within the population at large, but then building on that is super important to the so what question. So the next part of the competition is what can we do about it? What kind of recommendations and potential solutions that you might be able to put forth based off of some of the insights and implications that you have derived from the data itself. So we want your insights and recommendations to be driven from the data and the analysis that you perform in identifying those members. And that's a really important component. And then, of course, the last thing which will be looked at and evaluated is, again, it's important that we always keep top of mind that our recommendations and our way we drive forward demonstrates fairness and equity through the mitigation of any potential bias that might be provided through the data or how things get delivered. So that's something that is important. So what, but then also how can we ensure what we're doing is available and equal and distributed equitably for all. So those are the general competition objectives, if you will. And at this point, I think it's next logical question, of course, comes in terms of, well, what kind of data or what else, what am I basing all of those recommendations and so what's an analysis on? So we'll hand it over to Gil Ha, who will help us understand some of those details, and a lot more will be provided. This will just be an overview. Hand it to you, Gil.
Thanks, Jeff. Happy to be with you today. review a little bit about the data, and reemphasize some of these key components. So yeah, certainly it's not trivial to understand which ones of our members are struggling with housing insecurity. We would love to have universal screening. Maybe one day we will. We'd love our providers to screen on housing insecurity, transportation challenges, food insecurity, and so forth. We're not there right now. So we're going to leverage predictive modeling and advanced analytics to get us there. So we'll give you a data set, 40 to 50,000 members. It will have the outcome on there, whether that member screened positive for housing insecurity or not, along with lots of other data. So you're going to build a predictive model around that data. We'll give you a second data set that will have that outcome suppressed, and you'll score that. I should note that this the data set is synthetic, so it started off with our real members. It is run through a synthetic algorithm, which preserves all the structure and relationships there in the data, but any one row of data doesn't, trace back to one particular member, so we're preserving all of our members' PHI and so forth. A few other things to highlight. On the AI fairness, just to give you an example there, if our population data set suggests that members who are disabled maybe are struggling with housing insecurity, maybe that prevalence is about 15%, then if you're going to score the data, you would probably expect to see a similar prevalence, 15%, for members with a disability there too. And across other demographics as well, race and age and things like that. You wouldn't want your algorithm to be biased and to be undershooting in identifying members with these important needs and so forth, to give you a little flavor there. In regards to the solutions that you're going to develop, very open-ended, but I would suggest that perhaps those struggling with housing insecurity is not necessarily a homogeneous group. There's probably a lot of, there could be different segments there, and understanding maybe what some of these segments are, and perhaps not having a one-size-fits-all solution, but you may have different solutions depending on different segments of members dealing with housing insecurity. High level, we are the insurer for these members, so we have a tremendous amount of data, medical claims, pharmacy claims, lab claims. CMS shares demographic data with us. We buy third-party consumer data to give us a broader view of our member and credit features and so forth. Clinical conditions can be built on top of this data and so forth. So it is really a rich set of information. Maybe we'll go to the next slide and I'll iterate a few more things here. Okay, so we are working with Medicare Advantage. That is the focus of this competition. Like I said, each member has in this training set that binary flag, housing insecurity. We did screen, 40, 50,000 of our members to have this definitive self-reported data. The features you're going to work with have a one-year look back from when that screening date is. We're going to mine all those claims and a whole variety of features around utilization, clinical conditions, all sorts of things will be in that data, from their medical claims, their pharmacy claims, lab claims. Like I said, demographic data we get from CMS, age, gender, race. We have a flag whether they qualify for disability with Social Security, whether they're dually eligible for Medicare and Medicaid, do they qualify for low-income subsidy, rural, urban. So it is a very rich data set to work with. And the last thing I would say, Jeff mentioned earlier, you'll have this data, you'll work with it. There'll still be an opportunity there on September 27th in the Q&A session to answer any questions you may have on the data. So, all right, pass it back to you, Jeff.
Thank you, Gil. I think that's helpful to kind of understand what you're getting into, from what is the question at large dealing with housing insecurity, and then also what type of information are we looking at in order to understand and start building our solutions. So that's been very helpful. I think the next area that we're going to gravitate towards or move into is really more about the judging and some of the building blocks of the competition, and what does it what does success look like in this competition, and what are we looking for in order to move you down the path of success throughout the case competition? So next slide. Again, if I were to boil it down, number one, help demonstrate the fact that you understand what the underlying business issue is, how somebody with housing insecurity, it impacts their whole life, not just where they're laying their head at night, but also their whole health, how it can have negative outcomes on the rest of their well-being, if you will. So that's an important thing, that you do some background and understand the underlying business issue. Secondarily, and I mentioned this earlier, it's important that your solution is grounded in the data that has been provided. I'm sure there's lots of solutions that come to mind right away, but you haven't even looked at any data. So what we're looking for at the end is evidentiary type of recommendations based off of the information that is given to you. So that's important. And the next piece, it's not just a technical exercise that we're trying to go through here. The sexiness of your solution from a technical perspective is important, but that so what aspect of it, what insights can you glean from the data? What implications do those insights have in terms of how we as Humana might treat or approach our members who are struggling with this particular issue? So that it is a combination of the technical mastery that you're learning in school, but also that practical application to go and say, okay, now what does this mean? How can we use it? How can the people who are running the business make different decisions or apply this knowledge in what they're doing in order to better everybody's approach to this issue. And then obviously, last but not least, and it builds on the whole recommendations side of things, we need a path forward. What happens if we go down there? How valuable and beneficial is this not only for our membership, but for Humana? So we want that clear and articulate path forward. And I think if you follow those things, and you'll see that in a minute about what we're looking for as we dig a little bit deeper into each of the rounds and what we're looking for from a judging perspective. Next slide, please. So there are really 3 rounds at the end of the day in this particular case competition. Round 1, again, every team who gets data is eligible to and expected to participate in round 1. And so what it really boils down to is model accuracy. How well are you able to predict members most likely to be experiencing housing insecurity? That accuracy is an objective measure that we can go, and based off of your scored file that Gil mentioned, we're going to look at, and we're going to look at accuracy as defined by the ROC curves and the AUC metric that gets generated by your return scored file. That's a very helpful measure. Secondarily, as I mentioned, we added this fairness and equity score in there as well, a secondary objective measure that will tell you how to calculate that to create this disparity score. And then we'll use those 2 measures, the AUC metric in conjunction with the disparity score, to come up with an objective measure for your submission on how well does it perform in both accuracy and fairness. Once we have that calculator for each team's submission coming out, who turned in a submission for round 1, we'll end up ranking those people, those submissions from 1 to N, however many teams joined this year's case competition. And then based off of that objective measure, again, we'll draw the line at 50 and say these top 50 teams, and if there's ties, there's in the rules, you can see how we deal with ties, et cetera. But that's how we identify the top 50 teams who move on to round 2. So it's really round 1, purely objective, just based off of performance and fairness as defined by the scored holdout file that you return. Round 2, gets more into your written submissions. So now we move from just pure performance to insights and understanding and recommendations. So you'll end up seeing that we have multiple judges reviewing each of your written submissions. So in essence, 5 judges will read your submission and come up with their score. And they have a rubric that they follow that defines, and then here's a loose definition of what that rubric is. 20% are they, they're establishing questions and demonstrating the key performance indicators associated with the business issue. 30% of the rubric is focused on depth and description of the analysis and the actionable insights coming out of the analysis. And then 50% of the rubric and score that they're looking at is the ability to drive meaningful implications and recommendations. So that's the kind of the focus that we're looking for. And there's a little bit more detail. I won't go into much more now, but that each of the judges will score your submission 5 times, will come up with a composite score, and then based off of those multiple judges, we'll end up identifying the top 5 teams from those 50 teams. So if you're identified as the top 5, then you move into round 3. And round 3 is really just a presentation it's a culmination of what you've already done. And it's a presentation into our executive panel that will happen in November. And basically it's can you demonstrate in 20 to 25 minutes of time your understanding of the solution, what you came up with, the recommendations and everything to the panel. And they will ultimately listen to all 5 of the finalists and end up scoring. They have a rubric as well, end up scoring based off of clarity of your solution, visualization, et cetera, what the places are from first to fifth, if you will. So that's a very high level of the 3 rounds. If we go to the next page, we'll go into a little bit more detail into each one of those things. So I mentioned the round 1 is based off of model accuracy, 2 components, fairness and accuracy. We detail that a little bit better. A second, you'll get 2 files when data are released to you. One is meant to be used to train your models and to verify that your models are working well. The second will be that holdout file that won't have the answer of whether or not the self-reported answer about whether or not somebody's suffering from housing insecurity, but you'll score that file and we'll use that file to evaluate your model, both in terms of accuracy and fairness. Basically, when you return that file, it's important that you understand we only want 3 things on that file when you return it to us. It will be the ID that it has on it. It will be the score that your model came up with for that particular ID, and it will be the rank. So the highest scoring person or the highest scoring individual in terms of housing insecurity will get a number 1. The lowest scoring will get N, depending on how many people are in that holdout file. So those are the only 3 fields that we need in order to evaluate your model. As I mentioned, AUC metric will be used, and then the disparity score again will be used. And typically you'll see the written paper out on the website that clearly outlines how to calculate the disparity score. It is based basically on 2 fields, race and sex. Those are the fields that we will use to ensure that equal opportunity is being offered in your model based off of those combined fields, if you will. So that's round 1. Next slide, please. Outlines a little bit more about 2. a little bit more about round 1. I mentioned the leaderboard earlier, sorry. Basically, the leaderboard is that ability for you to turn in a scored file that for your holdout. Between that time date of October 3rd and October 14th, you can turn in files during that time period, and we'll basically give you a viewpoint into how well you're doing. And so if 200 people or 200 teams keep participating in that leaderboard throughout that 2-week time period, you'll be able to see where you stack up. If you stack up as position 1 through 10, you might be feeling pretty good about your solution. If all of a sudden on the leaderboard you fall into number 75 or 80 or 100, then you know you need to do some more work on your model before you get to the final submission date, or you won't be making it onto the second round. So it gives you a nice view into how well you are doing prior to that final submission date of October 16th. Basically, the only criteria or limitation for you as a team is you may submit one submission every day, once per day, from October 3rd through October 14th, and we'll evaluate it. You can't give us 5 models every day or 5 scored files every day and expect us to look at all of them. So it's 1 per day for those that 2-week time period that you can participate. Are you required to participate in the leaderboard? Absolutely not. It's not a requirement. If you're confident in yourself, you could just submit on the 16th and we'll judge your submissions at that point in time. The one thing I will want to make sure that is abundantly clear, so there is no confusion, is that on October 16th, 2 things are due. Number 1, the validation file you must turn in to help us identify round 1, who makes it to the top 50. But also you must submit your round 2 submission, which is a written. So both of those things are due on the 16th, and that's super important that you understand and realize that. So that's round 1. If you go on to the next page, we'll talk about round 2, which is the written submissions. As I mentioned, each team will get evaluated by 5 different scores, if you will. And this is the loose criteria and the rubric and some more detail about what is meant by the, established key business indicators, or how deep in your analysis is and actual business insights. So this gives you a little bit bigger view into what it is that we're looking for. And again, I reference, if you can go to the website and look at years past top 5 teams, you get a sense of what success looks like. So certainly pay attention to that, and pay attention, and you'll see this based off of the weighting itself. When I tell you it's not just a technical competition, but it's a balance between technical expertise as well as the business acumen and application of it, you'll see that in the weightings here. Next page, please. And lastly, certainly round 3 is really just the culmination, as I mentioned, of the entire challenge, where you present that to our executive panels, and they'll look at what you're presenting. Both they'll have read your written submissions, and they'll have great questions for you. But really, they're just looking for things to ensure, hey, are you engaging? Do you have the ability to influence? Are you communicating well? Are you able to articulate what you found and what people should be doing? Are you able to also kind of say what the implications or results of your recommendations might be if implemented? All of those things are looked at and evaluated by our executive panel in the finals that will take place in November. So that's a little bit more detail. And again, if you go to the website and go to the rules, this is very specifically outlined about what is looked at, how it's looked at in each round. So there's lots of details there that might, if you're unsatisfied or just craving more detail based off of what you've heard thus far. I promise you we're very close to being at the end, because we're just going to wrap up here, which is just telling you, next slide, about, again, reminder about final submissions. It's important that you realize October 16th, Inc. on your calendar, 11:59. If you submit on October 17th at 12:02, I'm sorry, you didn't meet the deadline. We're pretty harsh on that. Beautiful thing about the submissions is that everything is timestamped given you submit on the website. So no late submissions. And you submit actually on the website itself. So that's everywhere you need to know is that website. I mentioned the scored file and that it only includes 3 fields: the ID, the score, and the rank. Here's an example. It's a comma delimited file, so you must submit it in the form of a CSV file with those 3 fields. Imperative that you follow the protocols there. And the written submission, which is the second piece of information that gets submitted on the 16th as well as the written submission. You can either do that in Word or a PDF, either one is fine. But it's important that you follow the format requirements and you file the file naming conventions as well. Because if you don't follow these protocols, then it's very possible and probable that your submission won't be complete or counted. So follow these protocols, super important. Remember that judging is blinded. So don't put your names, don't put your schools, don't put any type of thing related to who you are or what you are in the body of your submissions. So the Word document and your written submissions, don't include any of that information. We'll keep the uniqueness in the file naming that you see here and how it's submitted. Everything else, when it gets submitted to the judges, we don't want them knowing who you are and where you're from. So that's important that you realize that. And again, if you have any questions or issues during the submission process, there's always an email outlet for you to follow through on. I think, honestly, that's the last page other than the one that just says, here are 3 more components that are available to you as a participant. The one is the website yet again. The second is the email that I just mentioned. And the third is there's a Facebook that available to you that you can go and submit on as well or follow more details. And there'll be reminders and other things that come through that social media approach. But this is the best way for you is the website. And really, that's what we had to cover from a content perspective today. At this point in time, we're going to transition into the Q&A session for today's call, which probably is more about the competition itself, eligibility, some background detail potentially on judging or submissions often are the questions that come to me, but please submit your questions if you have them to the Q&A section of the Zoom, and then we'll have our moderators join and start participating right now to moderate that Q&A, and they'll hand it off to the appropriate people at the time. But thank you for sitting with us for this time to go through the content. Again, super excited for you to participate in this year's case competition. It's been growing. It's always popular. And as I mentioned, it's competition is elevating. So, get ready to work hard and be rewarded at the end, because everybody who's participated in this really benefits at the end. So look forward to it. Let's start our Q&A session at this point.